Time for Devlog 2. Even though a big part of this game is about equipping your character with new items, there aren't currently that many items to use. I did have a few items in the game before, but I've since redesigned the character completely. So I think it's about time I got in and made some new items. I'm going to try and make one new item for each equipment slot. That way the character can be fully equipped. I started at the chest piece. Depending on the design, chest piece items can be split anywhere from 1 to 5 parts. So for example, I made this piece of art that goes on the main torso. Then I had to make the sprite for the upper arms. Fortunately for this item, both of the arms would be identical, so there was no need to make more than one sprite. So I made this one sleeve for both of the arms. After the individual parts are done, I have to make sure to get one complete image of the item. This will serve as the image you see on the card and on the character screen. Then I imported it into the project and made a new card with it. Overall, I think it turned out pretty well for my first new item. Then I just needed to make it so that when the item is used, it properly adds each piece to the character. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. The last step was to make sure that it shows up in the deck building screen, and that it worked functionally like a new card. It shows up in the armor section, all of the specifics of the item show up like the name and the description. You can click on it like all the others, and you can add and remove them and have up to 3 in your deck. Then it was time to make a new weapon. The current sword in the game I made in literally 2 minutes because I was using it as an example, so I spent a minute making this new one that's definitely a visual improvement over the old one. Now it's time to replace that old sword look with this new one. Just like I did before, I made a new card out of it, and put it in the player deck. Then I made it so it shows up in the right spot and rotation in the character's hand. But one-handed and two-handed items will align differently, so I'm going to have to make a two-handed item to display as well. The old axe design, again, I made in literally 2 minutes or so I made this new one. It should serve as a good example for a two-handed item. This would act exactly the same as a sword would, so I just need to get the alignment right. I have to make sure that during the animation, the character looks like he's gripping the item with both hands. Then, just like before, I made a new card out of it. And as you can see, it works. If you give him a two-handed item, he does the right animation. And he can run around and attack with the weapon in the right alignment. This axe looks much better than the old one that I had in, meaning it doesn't look absolutely terrible. Now it's time to make my first offhand item. I decided to go for a simple wooden buckler as the first offhand item. An offhand item essentially works the same as a weapon, just occupying a different slot on the character screen. Just like the others, I had to make a new card design out of it and add it to the player's deck. Now when you use the card on the character, the item should equip to the offhand slot. Like I said, basically works the same as a weapon, just occupies a different slot. The last piece to make was the leggings. I decided to make this soccer/football gear because I could make it try to occupy all 5 slots on the character, those being the waist, and upper and lower legs. But as you can see, because the character doesn't have feet, the rotation can be a little messed up when you give him something that's supposed to be on feet, like shoes. It was a good lesson, and now I know that shoes should be avoided. So as a compromise, I just remade the item without the shoes. It's not as visually appealing as it was before, but at least it works. And that's the last item I needed to make to complete the set. Time to put it all together and see how it looks. Now that we've got at least one of every type of piece, we can fully equip the character and occupy every slot he has. He can have a helmet, chest piece, and leggings, as well as a weapon and an offhand. As you can see, some of the pieces paired together look pretty ridiculous. But that's what I'm going for. I want it to be ridiculous. A pirate hat with a blue collar shirt. Why not, right? Now it's time to address an issue I've had for a while with the game. That being the UI, the cards and buttons and stuff. I want to improve them. While they don't look terrible, they don't look good either. While I don't want them to pop or anything, I want them to actually have an aesthetic style. Something that makes them look more like they fit in the game. I think the equipment pieces are good, but it's everything around the equipment pieces that looks like it doesn't belong. And fortunately, I had an idea that I think will work. Cardboard. Or more specifically, making everything look like it's a cut piece of cardboard. I started by making this new button look for the turn button. And then I tried making a new gradient for the text that makes it look like it was written on by Sharpie. Then I made a lot more UI elements. I think I made 4 or 5 different ones, that way I can have rectangles of all different sizes, as well as a card look. As for the reason I'm making everything look like it was made out of cardboard, I've had an idea of how I want the game to feel from the start. I wanted it to feel like a game that kids would have made up in their backyard or something. When my brother and I were growing up, we would do stuff like this all the time. We would take shoe boxes or something and build a giant palace out of them. We would often come up with new games to play and add new rules to them as we went along. So I guess you could say the inspiration from this game kind of came from our childhood. I want to try to mimic that feel, like it's kids playing in their backyard and they came up with all this stuff out of nowhere. Or they found some cardboard scraps and decided to make a game out of it. And here's how it looked after I added all the new elements in. For me at least, it looks way better than it did before. It looks like there's an actual style to it now rather than a bunch of random pieces put together. On the cards, to keep the colors different, I tried to make it look like a piece of colored paper was put on each piece of cardboard or something. This way the look of the cards could remain different for each type. But overall, at least, I feel like it's a massive improvement to the game. I also changed up all the character UI, so now not only are all the buttons different, but I changed the stat screen as well. I made the background look like it was cardboard also, and I changed the equipment slots as well to make it look more like they were a piece of paper that had been glued onto the cardboard. I also tried to keep the Sharpie look to make some of the text and other UI look like it was written on by marker or Sharpie, or maybe just like a pencil or something. Then I started adding the new cardboard look to the main menus. I changed the customization screens so that they better reflected the rest of the game. Again, I think it looks quite a bit better this way. That being said, there's still a lot of room for improvements. Then I experimented with adding this plus more to the rest of the menus. I'm trying to add some UI tweening. In layman's terms, that means animating the UI through scripting, which would ultimately be better performance-wise. I changed the rest of the menus to reflect this look as well. They look better overall than the other menu that I had, but I felt like there was still something about it that I was missing, something I could add to bring more of a unique look to it. Right now it's just buttons on a menu. I want it to look like more than that. So I tried out this idea of mine to make a swinging menu, one that looked like it was hanging down by a rope above the screen and that all the buttons were attached together. I think this looks a lot better than the UI tweening I did before, and there's no need to animate anything. I improved on this by creating my own rope sprite and adding that instead. That actually did a lot to improve it. And after all that, I put everything together. I changed all the menus so they reflect the same look, and now everything looks like it's hanging off of a rope. Everything's still pretty easy to click on, so it's not like it added more difficulty than it had to, and overall I'd say I'm pretty satisfied with the menus. They have a lot more personality now and a lot more life to them. And that's all for my second video. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Feel free to give any feedback or criticisms you might have, and if you're interested in the game and you want to see more, consider subscribing, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.